You're watching Ride the Teacups, and today we are baking cookies. Woohoo! Thanks so much for watching. Today we're going to show you step by step how to make the Jack Jack Num Num cookie recipe officially from Disneyland. Also, make sure that you watch until the very end. We've got a couple of things that we would do differently next time. We want to make sure you know all about it. So let's dive right in. Oh, all right. Before we start, you need to brown the butter. Don't do anything until you brown the butter. Seriously, you brown the butter and then you go out for your shopping list. So let's brown some butter. I've got it right over here. It's all ready to go. Come a little closer. I'll show you exactly what it is that I'm doing. All right, so this recipe calls for 2 cups of brown butter. However, browning the butter is going to lose some of its cohesiveness, so I actually need a little extra so that I get 2 cups of butter out of it. So I'm going to bring in a little extra. I've also let these sit out for a little bit. They've been out of the fridge for about half an hour, just at room temperature, so that they're easier to get through and they're not totally frozen extremely cold. So let's start chopping these things up into little slices and make some magic. All right, so what I've done is I've spread out my butter along the pan. I have very specifically used a light colored pan, so as the butter melts, I can actually see all the way to the bottom. This is really important. I've also cut them up into small strips just to help it kind of melt evenly and help it cook through. There is about a 5 to 10 second difference between browned butter and burned butter, and I certainly want the brown. I'm set to medium heat. And so this is going to start going. I can already see it obviously start to go. I just want to spread it around a little bit. Just make sure that everything happens very, very evenly. Now, for those of you who didn't know what browning the butter was before this, like me, browning the butter is going to melt everything, and it actually separates some of the milk in a solid form from the rest of the butter and sinks down to the bottom. And as the milk at the bottom actually begins to cook, it toasts the milk solids at the bottom of the pan and it turns a shade of brown. Those milk solids have such an amazing, slightly nutty, very sweet flavor. You want every single brown speck that you can possibly get. So just stay in here, make sure you're staying on top of it. Never stop moving this spatula. Let it go and melt just for a minute here and then get back to more of that. So this should take about 5 to 8 minutes from the time that you start, and you'll see it just barely start to foam when it's very, very close. So stay very, very close. I can already see it starting to separate a little bit around the edges here. I want to pay very close attention to it. And the brown specks are going to be on the bottom, so I want to be able to see through to the bottom and see where that's actually going to be. Alright, so there we're starting to foam up just a little bit. I'm going to take it off because I can feel the brown specks at the bottom also, and I'm immediately going to put it into my heat-proof pan. All of those brown specks inside here. All right, so we've got my brown butter sitting right here. I'm gonna let this sit at room temperature for a little while. I need it to soften or to harden back up, get back to room temperature from being on the stove. I wanna get it back to room temperature, so I'm gonna let it sit just for a little bit. Got yours done? Awesome. Well, now you have a lot of time to kill. So, Maestro, play my music. All right, guys, so you want to make some Jack Jack cookies. I want to make some Jack Jack cookies. Let's get started, get out our ingredients. You probably have some shopping to do, just so you know. Before we get started, I want you to know what it is that you're getting into, because you're not going to have these cookies for a few days. We've already browned the butter. I'm going to let that sit at room temperature for about an hour, and then I'm going to seal it up with cellophane put it in the fridge overnight and then come back to it and actually have a creamy brown butter that I'm going to use tomorrow. And then after we actually make all of our batter and get our cookie balls out on our cookie sheet, it's going to go back in the fridge again overnight. So you're looking at 3-day cookies, you guys. I promise, it's so worth the wait. All right, for your dry ingredients, let's start off the list. You are going to need some brown baking sugar. I have 1 1/4 cups of brown sugar that I'm going to use, in addition to the 1/4 cup of regular white sugar that I'm going to use. For flour, you're going to need 2 1/4 cups. So you're going to get a lot of good use out of your 1/4 cup measuring cup today. You're also going to need 1 teaspoon of sea salt, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and then transitioning this into the wet ingredients, you're also going to need 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. You're also going to want 1 egg and 1 egg yolk. So that's going to be 2 yolks but 1 egg white. We'll show you how to do that in just a minute. Of course, you're already familiar with the 2 cups of butter that we're going to go over. And finally, the good stuff. We have the chocolate chips that we're going to use. You're going to want a full cup of these. If you can find larger chocolate chunks, even better. You can use a semi-sweet or a milk chocolate. I've got a pretty good sweet tooth. I decided to go with the semi-sweet. Milk chocolate is going to be very rich because this is very, very sweet already. Up to you. I'd say let's get started, but we've already gotten started. So we have our brown butter that is currently solidifying. If you have some lead time, you can do over this. I generally like to leave it out in order to solidify until it gets back to room temperature. That could be upwards of like an hour. And then after that hour, you can wrap it up with cellophane up on top, put it in the fridge, and then break it out when you're actually ready to use it. I don't like putting it directly in the fridge right off of that because the extreme change from very hot to very cold, I'm pointing to my stove and my fridge like you can see, the transition from very hot to very cold very suddenly generally has an effect on the taste I found. So I like leaving it out, letting it get back to room temperature, and then putting it back in the fridge. Your butter lives in the fridge anyway, so you're set with that. So with all that said, let's start making a mess. Hey up there, I'm going to start getting some of the dry ingredients in while the butter is still finishing its cooling up. That's going to mean my 2 1/4 cups of flour go first. My tin had exactly 2 1/4 cups left. Look, that's a 1/4 cup. It's just under. I can shake off just the rest of this. 2 1/4 cups. We're very professional on this show. All right, and to our flour, we're going to add just 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And then whisk that in real good. All right, so with the flour and the baking soda here in the bowl ready to go, I'm just going to put this out of the way and go see how my butter's doing. It's not. Oh, you're still here. Yeah, I'd have made you some if I knew you were still be here, but I didn't, so go get your own. We got time to wait. I got my butter. It's beautiful cream, ready to go.
Just an amazing creamy consistency. A little bit of liquid butter going through, but most of it's just a solid cream. It's awesome.
Right, so the very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting my sugars and my salt into the buttercream mix. It's going to be 1 1/4 cups of the brown sugar, a 1/4 cup of the regular sugar, and just 1 teaspoon of the sea salt.
You can really see the creamy consistency we're going for here.
All right, so now that I have the buttercream mixture going with the sugars and the salt, I'm going to start transferring everything into my actual mixing bowl. And just like before with the butter, I want every last drop out of here. I really do not want to overmix this. All right, I also need to add in my vanilla, my whole egg, and just the egg yolk. So let's do the vanilla first because that's easy. We'll take the regular egg, which is also easy, and throw it in there. Then go wash my hands. Really guys, remember to wash your hands a lot. Soap and water, especially after handling eggs, especially in this recipe. Now for separating the egg yolk without the egg white. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. Ultimately, the more you handle the yolk without breaking it, the more the egg white is going to slip away, and then you'll be left with just the yolk, and that's the idea. I am very sure that the way that I'm doing it is going to be wrong, and you're going to yell and bark at me over this one, so don't hurt me. Do it the way you want to, and if you don't know of a way, try this. See what happens. Wash your hands a lot. Crack it open just like normal, but I'm going to run the water in my sink and make sure that I'm going to hold the yolk in my hand and let the white slip through my fingers. There's just the yolk. So there you have it, my way of doing it. Don't come after me if that's awful. Do tell me a better way if there's a better way that you know. But I have just my egg yolk. In it goes. I needed to clean my sink anyway. Gonna mix it again on very low. And I want to be very, very careful not to overdo this. That looks good. It's got our dry ingredients that we've already put together, and I'm going to slowly mix that in also. Scrape off the sides a little. And finally, with my mixing done, I'm going to start adding in my cup of chocolate chips, and I'm actually going to manually stir those around. All right, so with that done, I'm going to start setting up my parchment paper because we're just about ready. I have one very large cookie sheet, one very large sheet of parchment paper, and then I'm going to start scooping these things out onto there. I like using an ice cream scooper for it and make it a big one, guys. Really a big one. And throw these guys into the fridge, let them chill overnight, and come back to them in the morning. See you in the morning. They look pretty cool. They look okay. We have frozen batter balls overnight. Not frozen, we've refrigerated them overnight. And I've got these, but I don't want all 12 on one tray because they expand and that doesn't give it enough room. So what I've done is made another tray that'll also have parchment paper on it. I'm going to put half of these onto here. Nothing is too close to each other, nothing's too close to the edges, everything is nice and spaced out. All right, and now right before we put them in the oven, I want to make sure that I put some chocolate chips on the top. I like the presentation of the cookies with the chocolate chips right on the top of the cookie all the time, so I'm gonna put just a couple of here. If you want to stray from the actual recipe a little bit, like my buddy here does, he is going to put some peanut butter chips on top instead. And maybe we'll have a couple with this ridiculously amazing Reese's peanut butter pack. It's their baking pack. It has things like their mini Reese's peanut butter cups, little Reese's pieces, things like that. And we'll get a couple with those sprinkled on top because, you know, why not? It'll be fun, right?
With what?
With what?
M&M's.
And M&M's. Kind of. It doesn't have to be very many, just a couple up on top will do the trick. Hey Buster. I'm ready to put some peanut butter chips on yours.
Can I eat the rest?
Oh, suddenly you don't want to put them in the cookie anymore? You want to eat them? That sounds like a good idea.
But I would like a week.
Go wash your hands, please.
Let's get these things in the oven. Now with 2 rows of the baking shells, I'm going to want to switch them halfway through. Look at these absolutely enormous monsters. That is amazing. We're gonna let these cool for a little bit before we put them out on a cooling rack. These guys are gonna be nice and cool for about 10 to 15 minutes and just let them chill out a little bit. All right, so our cookies have been cooling for quite a while. We've got them up here on plates. We're about ready to do that big taste test. A couple of notes, because I am not a professional cook by any stretch of the imagination. Most of you have figured that out at this point. The cookies did come out very, very flat. I probably should have left them more in a ball instead of flattening them out so that they raised up a little bit higher. It also looks like they probably could have used another minute or 2 inside of the oven. But short of that, next ones will obviously be quite a bit better. Try them out for yourself, see what happens. It's a cookie, it's gonna come out fine. It's gonna be super yummy. But we can always learn things for next time, right? So a couple of tips, make sure to leave them up in a ball and let them bake a little bit longer than it looks like they need it. Not that one. Okay, can you get it? All right. Try this one. Oh, goodness, it's coming apart. That's awesome. Super yummy. Definitely needed another minute in the oven. I may actually go do that. But in the meantime, check out this recipe. Hope you guys really enjoy it. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to find out more ways to bring the magic of Disneyland home, make sure that you smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. It'll make sure that we get all of our new videos directly to you so that you can have Disneyland in your own house in all kinds of different ways. We like to help you out before, during, and after your Disneyland trip, bringing that magic home and making those memories last, especially the yummy ones.